Imagine this. In a span of just 3 short months, more than $1 billion worth of the world's most advanced artificial intelligence chips, designed by the iconic American tech giant NVIDIA, quietly and almost invisibly crossed international borders into China. This happened despite some of the harshest and most comprehensive export bans the global technology industry has ever witnessed. These chips, including models like the B200, H100, and H200, are not just new gadgets. They are the very engines that power the artificial intelligence revolution, the tools that global tech giants and governments desperately covet in the 21st century. So, how did these precious, high-performance processors, officially forbidden from reaching Chinese shores, find their way past the formidable walls of American sanctions? And what does this extraordinary episode reveal about the shifting balance of technological power, the shadowy realities of global trade, and the future of innovation itself? To grasp just how seismic this moment is, let's take a step back and trace the rise of semiconductors as the lifeblood of our digital economy. Over the past several decades, these minuscule wafers of silicon have become as crucial to modern civilization as oil was in the 20th century. Every smartphone in your hand, every electric vehicle on the highway, every supercomputer crunching climate data or cracking genetic codes, each and every one depends on the relentless progress of chip technology. For years, the United States has held a commanding lead in this race, with American firms like NVIDIA, Intel, and AMD setting the pace. NVIDIA, in particular, has emerged as the undisputed champion of artificial intelligence hardware, its chips forming the backbone of everything from cloud computing data centers to the training of cutting-edge machine learning models. The B200 and H200 series chips, for example, are so sophisticated that they have become the gold standard for artificial intelligence research, national defense projects, and the ambitions of trillion-dollar technology companies. But this dominance has not gone unchallenged. Over the last 10 years, China has poured hundreds of billions of dollars into its own semiconductor industry, launching state-led initiatives to close the technology gap and secure a place at the top of the artificial intelligence hierarchy. Beijing's ambitions are vast: to lead in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and next-generation communication networks, thereby reshaping the very foundations of global power. To fully appreciate the scale of these ambitions, consider China's Made in China 2025 plan. This initiative aims to transform the country into a global powerhouse in advanced industries, including semiconductors. The government has offered lavish subsidies, tax breaks, and grants to domestic chipmakers, hoping to reduce reliance on foreign technology. Yet, despite all these efforts, the reality remains that China is still dependent on Western-designed chips for the most cutting-edge applications. This dependency is seen as a strategic vulnerability, prompting Beijing to pull out all the stops in acquiring advanced technology by any means necessary. In response, the American government under President Trump and later administrations dramatically tightened restrictions on the export of high-end semiconductors. The logic was clear. By denying China access to the most powerful chips and the technical know-how to produce them, Washington could slow Beijing's climb up the technological ladder. In October of the year 2024, these export controls reached a new level of intensity. American companies were explicitly barred from selling that top-tier artificial intelligence chips like the B200 and H100 to Chinese customers. The expectation, at least in Washington's corridors of power, was that these sweeping bans would slam the brakes on China's artificial intelligence momentum. But as history has shown, markets have a way of outsmarting even the most well-intentioned regulators. Almost overnight, a sprawling black market emerged. Middlemen, shell companies with murky ownership, and third-party data center operators sprang into action. Product boxes, emblazoned with the logos of global server giants like Supermicro and Asus, began to pop up all over Chinese social media platforms. These were not just empty boxes. They were filled with racks upon racks of the very chips that, according to Washington, should never have left American soil. The sophistication of this shadow trade is nothing short of remarkable. Southeast Asian countries, especially Thailand and Malaysia, quickly became critical nodes in this clandestine supply chain. Chinese buyers arranged for server racks loaded with banned chips to be shipped to these countries, where they could then be rerouted to China, often under the radar of American authorities. In some cases, the servers were even assembled and tested abroad, making the origin and end user harder to trace. The Financial Times, drawing from sales contracts, company documents, and interviews with industry insiders, estimates that over the course of just 3 months in the second quarter of the year 2025, more than $1 billion worth of restricted NVIDIA chips slipped into China via these covert channels. Let's pause on that number for a moment. $1 billion in banned chips, not over a decade or a year, but in a single quarter. That is a scale of demand and a level of urgency that speaks volumes about the stakes in this global technology arms race. And the ingenuity on display is breathtaking. Distributors set up shell companies in obscure jurisdictions, used encrypted messaging apps to coordinate shipments, and sometimes even openly flaunted their ability to procure the next generation of chips. In fact, some Chinese firms are already advertising the soon-to-be-released B300 chip, boasting that they can secure what is supposedly unattainable for Chinese buyers. A Chinese distributor, quoted by the Financial Times, put it bluntly, "History has proven many times before that given the huge profit, arbitrators will always find a way." This is not just an economic gamble, it's a high-stakes game of technological leapfrog, with the potential to reshape the future of artificial intelligence, national security, and even the global economic order. NVIDIA, for its part, has publicly stated that it has no evidence of any artificial intelligence chip diversion. The company insists that trying to build data centers using smuggled hardware is a losing proposition, both technically and economically. They argue that real data centers require not just chips, but ongoing service, support, and regular firmware updates, all of which can only be provided to authorized products. Yet, for many in China's booming technology sector, the risk is worth it. With such intense demand and astronomical profits at stake, a single high-end chip can fetch a premium of up to several times its official price. The market's appetite shows no signs of waning. Industry experts warn that this is a classic case of the so-called whack-a-mole problem. As soon as authorities clamp down on one smuggling route, another pops up somewhere else. When the incentive is so huge, someone always finds a crack, said a cybersecurity analyst to the Financial Times. The ingenuity of these operators echoes the global history of technological embargoes, from the Cold War's COCOM restrictions to the more recent attempts to limit Iran and Russia's access to Western technology. In almost every case, the pursuit of profit and the thirst for progress have spawned elaborate workarounds. It is also worth noting that this is not the first time the world has witnessed the rise of a flourishing black market in high-tech goods. During the Cold War, the Coordinating Committee for Multilateral Export Controls, known as COCOM, sought to restrict the flow of sensitive technology from the West to the Soviet bloc. Despite these efforts, clever intermediaries, shell companies, and diplomatic pouches were used to bypass restrictions. Historians now acknowledge that for every embargo, there was a corresponding maze of loopholes and underground channels. The current saga with NVIDIA chips is, in many ways, a modern echo of these earlier struggles. Only now, the stakes are even higher and the technology far more potent. But what are the broader consequences of this billion-dollar shadow trade? The immediate impact goes far beyond the lost revenue for American firms or the missed export quotas. If China can continue to access the world's most advanced artificial intelligence chips through unofficial channels, it casts serious doubt on the effectiveness of American export controls. Some analysts suggest that this black market could accelerate China's progress in artificial intelligence by months or even years, potentially erasing the competitive edge that Western policymakers hoped to maintain. Let's not forget, artificial intelligence is not just about building smarter chatbots or more efficient logistics systems. The technology is rapidly becoming the heart of military planning, surveillance infrastructure, and cyber operations. Advanced artificial intelligence algorithms trained on American-designed hardware could soon be powering Chinese defense projects, intelligence gathering, and even strategic decision-making. This is not the stuff of science fiction. In the last few years, United States intelligence agencies have repeatedly warned that China's rapid advances in artificial intelligence could tilt the scales in everything from drone warfare to information operations. Take, for example, the growing use of autonomous aerial vehicles, or drones, in modern conflict. These platforms rely on artificial intelligence chips for real-time image recognition, navigation, and target acquisition. If Chinese manufacturers can access NVIDIA's latest processors, their drones could become smarter, faster, and more resilient, giving them a decisive edge on the battlefield. Similarly, artificial intelligence-powered surveillance systems are already being deployed across urban China for purposes ranging from law enforcement to social credit scoring. The availability of state-of-the-art chips could supercharge these efforts, raising profound questions about privacy, human rights, and the global spread of authoritarian technology. On the other hand, some industry veterans argue that the challenges of running high-performance data centers on smuggled hardware are not trivial. Setting up and maintaining clusters of unauthorized chips without official support or firmware updates carries real risks, from hardware failures to cybersecurity vulnerabilities. There are already reports of Chinese companies struggling to integrate smuggled chips into their existing infrastructure, facing issues with compatibility, system reliability, and even the risk of sabotage. Still, for many, these are acceptable trade-offs in the larger quest to stay at the forefront of artificial intelligence development. There's also a major economic angle to consider. The semiconductor industry is one of the most complex and globalized supply chains in existence. A single chip might involve design in California, manufacturing in Taiwan, testing in Malaysia, and final assembly in China. When export controls force companies to jump through hoops, the entire supply chain becomes more opaque, less efficient, and, ironically, potentially less secure. Some observers fear that these restrictions could ultimately backfire, encouraging both Chinese and Western firms to develop parallel supply chains outside the reach of American regulators. This could fragment the global technology ecosystem, slow down innovation, and raise costs for everyone. If we look at recent trends, there is already evidence that companies in both the United States and China are scrambling to build redundant supply chains. American firms are exploring manufacturing partnerships in countries like Vietnam and India, while Chinese tech giants are investing heavily in local chip startups. This decoupling of technology ecosystems could usher in an era of technological blocks, where hardware, standards, and even internet protocols diverge along geopolitical lines. The ripple effects would be felt not just by big corporations, but by consumers worldwide, potentially leading to higher prices, reduced product choice, and slower diffusion of innovation. Looking at the bigger picture, this battle over semiconductors is just one front in a much wider contest for technological supremacy. The United States and China are locked in a race not just for artificial intelligence hardware, but for leadership in quantum computing, advanced manufacturing, clean energy, and next-generation telecommunications. Each of these domains relies on access to the world's best chips, and each is, in its own way, a battleground in the struggle for economic and geopolitical influence. Quantum computing, for instance, is an area where both superpowers are investing billions of dollars. The ability to process certain types of calculations exponentially faster than today's computers could revolutionize cryptography, drug discovery, and logistics. But quantum computers, too, are built on sophisticated hardware foundations, meaning that whoever controls the chip supply has a significant head start. The same is true for green energy technologies, such as solar panels and electric vehicle batteries, which increasingly rely on custom chips for efficiency and safety. So, what can be done? For American policymakers, the billion-dollar smuggling spree is a wake-up call. Technology bans, no matter how strict, are not a silver bullet. Real containment requires constant vigilance, international coordination, and creative solutions. One emerging idea is to work much more closely with Southeast Asian partners, since countries like Thailand and Malaysia have become critical transit hubs for restricted chips. Enhanced customs checks, end-user verification, and shared intelligence could help plug some of the most obvious loopholes. But these measures are costly, time-consuming, and not always effective against determined actors. Another possible approach is to rethink how export controls are enforced in the age of globalized technology. Instead of focusing solely on physical goods, some experts argue for stronger controls on software, know-how, and technical support, the so-called digital glue that makes hardware truly valuable. After all, a chip without the right software or maintenance is little more than an expensive paperweight. By making it harder to operate and upgrade smuggled chips, American firms could blunt some of the advantages that black market buyers seek. There's also a need for greater transparency and accountability in the technology supply chain. Companies must invest in new tools and processes to track their products from factory to final user, leveraging blockchain, digital watermarks, and advanced analytics. For industry professionals, the lesson is clear. Due diligence is no longer optional. Every company, from chip designers to server manufacturers, must scrutinize not only their direct customers, but also the intricate web of resellers, system integrators, and logistics providers who touch their products along the way. For technology enthusiasts, students, and everyday global citizens, this story is a vivid reminder of just how interconnected and fragile our world has become. The smartphone in your hand, the data center powering your favorite streaming service, the artificial intelligence behind a simple smart assistant, all of these depend on supply chains that stretch across continents, governed by rules that sometimes fail to keep pace with reality. The chips at the center of this saga are not just technical marvels, they are symbols of national ambition, corporate rivalry, and the boundless drive for progress. Yet, there are glimmers of hope. History is full of examples where fierce competition, even in the face of embargoes and trade wars, has spurred remarkable innovation. When the United States restricted exports to the Soviet Union during the Cold War, it pushed both sides to invest even more heavily in research and development. Similarly, today's chip wars may ultimately accelerate breakthroughs not just in China, but around the world. Already, Chinese firms are pouring resources into developing homegrown alternatives to NVIDIA's most powerful chips. While they still lag behind in several key areas, such as transistor density, power efficiency, and software ecosystem, the gap is narrowing every year. To illustrate, let's look at the rapid progress of Chinese chip makers like Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, or SMIC, and emerging startups like Biren Technology. Over the past 5 years, these companies have managed to shrink the technology gap by innovating in chip architecture and leveraging massive state investment. Even though their products still fall short of NVIDIA's best, the pace of catch-up is accelerating. The Chinese government has set ambitious targets, aiming for 70% self-sufficiency in semiconductors by the end of this decade. If achieved, this would mark a seismic shift in the global technology balance. But here's a crucial point that is often overlooked. Even the most advanced hardware has a short shelf life. In the relentless world of semiconductors, today's state-of-the-art chip is tomorrow's obsolete relic. What truly matters is not just who has the latest hardware now, but who can maintain the pace of innovation over the long term. And innovation, unlike a physical chip, cannot simply be smuggled across a border. It requires open collaboration, world-class education, and a culture that rewards risk-taking and creativity. Consider Silicon Valley's rise. It was not just the availability of capital or government contracts that fueled its ascent, but a vibrant ecosystem of universities, entrepreneurs, and risk-takers. The free flow of ideas, talent, and investment proved to be a far more potent driver of progress than any single technological breakthrough. For China to truly close the gap with the West, it must not only acquire hardware, but nurture a culture of innovation, a challenge that cannot be solved through smuggling alone. So where does all this leave us? Can the United States really contain China's artificial intelligence ambitions by tightening export controls? The answer, at least for now, seems to be only partially. As long as there is overwhelming demand and spectacular profits, determined actors will always find workarounds. Every time one loophole is closed, new routes and new tactics emerge. The battle for technological supremacy is not a single event, but an ongoing saga, a marathon rather than a sprint. For policymakers, this means the work of safeguarding national interests is never finished. It will require not only smarter enforcement, but also greater investment in research, deeper partnerships with global allies, and a willingness to adapt to an ever-changing technological landscape. For companies, it means embracing transparency, investing in supply chain security, and preparing for a world where the lines between friend and competitor are constantly shifting. And for all of us, viewers, students, professionals, the lesson is to stay informed, stay curious, and recognize the immense power and responsibility that comes with shaping the future of technology. The story of the smuggled NVIDIA chips is a window into a much bigger world where innovation, ambition, and geopolitics are forever intertwined. If you found this deep dive as eye-opening as we did, make sure to subscribe for more stories from the front lines of the global technology race. Drop your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Do you believe that technology bans can really work, or will the market always stay one step ahead? What do you think is the best way forward for innovation and security in a world of shifting alliances and relentless competition? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on